What's really, really interesting is I want to look at something here. I'm going to look at the history of the two. Do you have the chart? There's a chart about the market value of the two big Swiss banks. Credit Suisse is the black, and UBS Group is the red. And you can see, if you go back, go a little bit to the bottom so we can see the years. There were years there. There they are. So you see right after the crisis of 2008, 2009, and what this graph is showing, if you're driving or you're just listening to this, let me explain the chart you're looking at. It means in 2008, 2009, at the time of the crash, the market cap for UBS and Credit Suisse was roughly the same. And the chart shows they were in the $60 billion range of total market cap. And then over the next several years, the lines separate. They tend to follow market trends, but they get farther apart as UBS goes up to 70 billion, 65 billion in market cap, but poor old Credit Suisse starts sagging down to 30 or 4 billion in market cap. So the lines start separating. And then just this past January, before the crisis happened for SVB, and in the background, we would all soon find out that Credit Suisse had a problem. It was a $10 billion market cap for Credit Suisse and over $70 billion market cap for UBS. So UBS is suddenly 7 times the market cap size. So what this shows you, over the time that these lines are spreading apart, there's a little, and we'll go into the history of Credit Suisse in just a second, because that's a very noble, wonderful history, and an entrepreneur that found it that I'm going to talk about in a second. But it shows you that you go bankrupt gradually, then suddenly. Ernest Hemingway wrote a book called The Sun Also Rises, and in that there's a dialogue between two characters, and one said, "How did you go bankrupt?" And he said, 2 ways, gradually, then suddenly. And that's usually the case. I mean, UBS and SVB were having trouble, Credit Suisse and SVB were having trouble in the background, and we now know it was getting worse, and then suddenly there's a spark or an event or something, and that pushes it over the edge. Well, you know, it wasn't just social media and venture capitalists tweeting that caused the bank run on SVB. Yep, that may have been the death shot. That may have been the knockout punch, but they were also upside down on those, on the bonds they had. And that was not the fault of venture capitalists. That was not the fault of a run on the bank. That was a dumb decision a couple of years prior to make yield on extra deposits they have, and they bet wrong, and then they didn't have a chief risk officer for 8 months, and so you know, there's a lot of things that happen. Add all those things up. Each one of those things was a gradual issue for SVB. Well, similarly, there were gradual issues happening for Credit Suisse. And Credit Suisse, check this out. It was founded way back 166 years ago by this guy. There'll be a picture here for those of you that are watching. For those of you that are listening, I will just describe for you. A man in a suit from 1866 with a big beard, looking very distinguished, black and white picture that would be typical of that time. And he is Alfred Escher. And in 1856, he said, with a lot of entrepreneurial spirit and pride in his country, he said, we are a nation of mountains, and we need to build out a railway network to get us around these mountains. And he basically founded the build out of that, and that became what would be known as Credit Suisse. On the other side, 6 years later, UBS is born, but UBS is different. UBS was a roll-up of 370 separate institutions over 160 years, culminating in the merger of Union Bank of Switzerland and Swiss Bank Corporation, keeping the name Union Bank of Switzerland, UBS. And during the financial crisis of 2008, UBS actually got a big bailout. And then I do not believe Credit Suisse got a bailout. But after that 2008 financial crisis, Credit Suisse had a tough time, and UBS kind of found its way forward. And so the decisions that were made resulted in a bankruptcy that went slowly, gradually, then suddenly. So let's talk about that a little bit, what it means for you and me. We were just talking at the beginning, and I did this deliberately. I chose that comment on OTT and cable for a reason. Things can creep up on you. And in business, a lot of things can creep up on you. And if you're a business or you're an entrepreneur and you've found something, you need to know that your team every day or at one special meeting a month with you, you question everything. Is this still the best liability insurance for us? Is this still the best deal with shipping? We're with, UPS. Is there a better deal even through FedEx Ground? Always asking the questions and then challenging yourself. Do we need that right now? Oh, we want to get new computers and bigger displays. Okay, I can see bigger displays. People can see it. But are people thinking about it? Are people looking at it? And then decisions you make with customers. You start allowing your salespeople maybe to discount a little bit. And what happens is when times get tough, all of these things add up. Expenses that are higher than they should be because no one's paying attention to challenge them to earn your business and get you the best deal that you can. $5 a month matters. You have to treat it like that. You then take a look at, the pricing. Are you there where your competitors are? Should you be 2% more because you're delivering quality, and are your salespeople selling that? All of these are things that add up. And I was reading about bankruptcies over the weekend, and they say bankruptcies have been gradually, then suddenly. So gradually, there's what's called the expense or the gross profit effect. Discounting, not charging enough. That's the gross profit effect. And then all of the expense effect. We talked about that. People asking for assistance. You're growing, and all of a sudden everybody wants an assistant, and people say yes. Well, now, wait a minute. Why can't one assistant handle 4 people in a couple departments? And what does each person need done? There's all those effects. Those get compounded by a market downturn or a competitive strike. And people say, well, we'll get through this. And you as the owner, what do? Maybe you get a credit line at the bank, and suddenly you're carrying 50 grand on the credit line. Well, that's okay. It's a $100,000 credit line. But now you're 50 grand in debt and you're paying the interest every month. Or maybe even interest and a little bit of amortized payoff. Do you see? That would be known as a gradual step. And then maybe you say, well, we'll get a bigger lease, we'll get a bigger place, and we'll just believe we can grow into it. No, you have to be prudent. Is your momentum validate that? Is it the right decision? Maybe you need to sell the dream to customers and you need a better place, and that's all part of getting a better price for what's going on. All of these decisions will leave you as the pinch. In the pinch, the economic pinch, when that all happens, it's going to leave you sitting there all by yourself. And by the way, and picture this also on a personal level, if that individual is you, and you're buying clothes, you're not paying attention to your cell phone bill, you're not paying attention to what you pay for OTT, and you can have expenses going up. And then you're deciding that you need more take-home pay, so you stop saving in a 401k that was offered by your company, which is pre-tax dollars, and it should be an easy decision. Uh-oh. All of this comes together, and it's gradual and then sudden. The sudden part is when an economic thing happens. You're laid off of your job in the middle of COVID, and it takes you 90 days to find another job, and you had barely that much in emergency savings. Or you didn't even have an emergency savings. Boom, you're nearly bankrupt, except for a government check that comes in. You're almost personally bankrupt. You're on the edge. Your car could be repossessed. Now, I know you're going to tell me, well, no, during COVID, they suspended the repossessions, and landlords couldn't do that. Okay, well, what if it's not COVID? It's just a regional hit that takes. You live in New Orleans, and Katrina comes in and wipes out your 2 dry cleaners, and it takes 4 months for the city even to get back to just something that looks like normal daily life, even though there's a ton of rebuilding that has to do. There's no government check for that. You're hit. So the economic hits happen and you can't take the blow, and then you go suddenly into bankruptcy. That's exactly what happened to SVB. That's exactly what happened to Credit Suisse. Now, Credit Suisse didn't declare bankruptcy, and the regulators didn't step in, but they were on the verge, and there were all these discussions happen, and the government of Switzerland has even said, hey, you know, UBS, you have to carry the first $5 billion of ultimate loss, if there is ultimate loss, and we may step in with a backstop or a bailout, but we don't want to do that, and you're taking the first amount, and the bondholders are wiped out. Suddenly, rational voice from a government, and that government of Switzerland. Well, SVB took that punch, and they couldn't take the punch. You know, the bank run happened. Why did the bank run happen? Because they'd done all these gradual things, and suddenly they're trying to get their butt out of the ditch. There you have it. Don't be that company. Be prudent at every moment. Be a planner at every moment. Be eager to find savings at every moment. Because you know what those savings add up to? You know what a little more margin adds up to? A little more profit. So that you can turn around and reward the stars in your business when your competitors are taking the shot. So, excuse me for getting a little, you know, animated here today on this, but I believe in the Hemingway quote, you go bankrupt two ways, gradually, then suddenly. You know, there's also a lot of pain. You know, you're going to make a lot of pain on customers. Customers that needed your product, now you're not there to provide it. Families of your own business. So now your name's on the door of, your name's on, not on the door, your name's on the wall as a list of another business owner that could have avoided it but caused a bankruptcy and hardship for the community. You know, there's a documentary out, Gradually Then Suddenly. What city was that? Was that Detroit? The Gradually Then Suddenly documentary?
I think so.
I think so. Yes. Thank you, Kellyanne. It was Gradually Then Suddenly, the documentary about the city of Detroit and how it ended up in this horrible financial situation, and it has been like a canary in a coal mine, meaning a signal for other communities that are out there that may be faced with these kind of things. And so there you have it. There is even a documentary out talking about how one of the nation's proud cities went bankrupt and all the things that happened to it. So, you know, you hate to see it. But anyway, $17.3 billion in bonds wiped out. They dodge a bullet on bankruptcy, but there's a lot of hardship and pain in that.